So Gothamites, one of the biggest hits that Gotham achieved in all of its 5 years was their different iterations, if you will, of the Joker. But not everyone agrees it should have gone down the way it did. So here's the way I think Gotham could have done their Joker story a little bit differently. What is up, Gothamites? Welcome to a brand new Gotham video. Now this one is probably going to be a little bit long because finally I am going to take a look back at Gotham, specifically how they did the Joker. And, you know, as much as I loved everything they did about it, generally speaking, it didn't for me, and a lot of fans go about the best way of doing it possibly could have, you know, with the storyline. So I'm going to have a look back at Jerome Valeska, Jeremiah, how it ended, and how truly I think it should have gone. And how in a full story and a full circle arc, it would have felt a lot more satisfying, at least to me. Believe it or not, this is past Boba right now. This is pre-recorded. I am away on holiday or vacation, whatever you want to call it. So I hope you guys enjoy this video. Let's get into this. So I think it comes at no surprise that one of the best things Gotham had going was the fact that they had this gem with their Joker story. I'll never forget watching Gotham Season 1 and enjoying the show and all of the promo material leading up to episode 16, The Blind Fortune Teller, with the poster showing Jerome's face with a load of ha 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 symbols. Like, they were clearly hyping up something that we all really wanted to see on the show, and that interrogation scene gave me chills, and also so much excitement for Gotham's future because the potential of this story they could tell was just so huge, mixed in with, of course, that, you know, they more or less couldn't have cast a more perfect choice, being Cameron Monaghan. Now, don't get me wrong, if I remember correctly, even before leading up to this episode, I was quite apprehensive about the fact that Gotham was clearly alluding to the fact that they were going to explore a more or less Joker origin story in this prequel universe. And I didn't know how I felt about that because it hadn't exactly been done before, you know, like this. But if there's one thing that I've learned about the whole, you know, it's supposed to be done this way, or it's, you know, it's not, that's not how it is in the comics, you know, that talk is completely the wrong way to look at things, or, you know, some things when it comes to comics these days, especially when live action shows are adaptations, and it becomes even truer with this character as there is no actual set definitive origin for the character of the Joker. Granted, you know, that the Killing Joke is the most widely accepted one for many fans. But really, don't get the wrong impression here. I'm not saying that, oh, because, you know, you can change things in adaptations, and that with this character, as there's no concrete origin, that means you can write the Joker to be like Two-Face? No, I mean, of course not. But you have to maintain various cemented characteristics of the Joker, which, you know, of course they did in a variety of ways in Gotham that we'll get to. But in terms of origins and changing things like that up, that's fine. So back to the point here, there was so much potential from this first bone-chilling scene from Jerome Valeska in that interrogation room, but imagine yourself a line graph. Things throughout the seasons, you know, kind of went up and down at points. Now let me just say, by the way, before anyone gets triggered, just as a little disclaimer, of course, just like a lot of fans of Gotham, the Joker storyline was one of my favorites, and I enjoyed a lot of it. But it was far from perfect, and when I say far from perfect, it was far from perfect, especially from the end of Jerome onwards. Now, that was a big hint as to how things are going to go in this video, because ever since Jerome went, as much as I enjoyed aspects of Jeremiah, for example, how he had such an iconic Joker look, honestly my favorite throughout the whole show, and attitude in Season 5 compared to Season 4, it somewhat lost its magic at some point along the way in retrospect, perhaps even at its very creation. But let's wind back the clocks. We need to look at this and be fair and take everything into account. We can't forget that the whole reason, no matter what you've read throughout the years, that Gotham struggled with its Joker story and mainly came up with that whole, these guys are the inspiration for that guy who we all know who is out there. This is because, quite frankly, and more or less solely because they couldn't use that character definitively in the show, despite how much we got there by its final season and episode with Jeremiah, or Jay, being the Joker, which is why throughout the seasons all they could really do is allude to the fact that this guy, or these guys, these Valeskas, are somehow and somewhat involved in the birth of that character in Gotham's future. I mean, after all, we can't forget that it's a prequel. Now, some of you out there may be asking or wondering why that is. I have spoke about this quite a few times before in various videos, but essentially, they weren't allowed to. Just like, why we don't have a Batman TV show, etc. Characters like this are gold mines and are only to be really mainly featured in movies. More or less, if something doesn't pan out on the TV shows and Gotham did a terrible job with the character and it completely flops in every, aspect, they don't want it diluting the brand and, all that jazz. I mean, here's a quote from Cameron Monaghan's understanding himself, or, like what he was told. Pure green was off limits to us, as well as the name Joker. A decision from high-ups as they wanted to reserve these for the films, a decision which ultimately I respect. They did not want to dilute a very lucrative brand. It allowed for creativity on our end. And I completely respect this too, and this is also why I feel like some fans need to cut Gotham a bit of slack for what they could and couldn't do, and, have to rely on their creativity to cook something up. Granted that as, seasons went along, they were given a little bit more to play with in terms of being, a bit more obvious, but, of course, this still could have been executed better, which is what we will get onto as to how. So as a result, Gotham knew from that first season how much of an interest Cameron Monaghan's Jerome sparked in the fandom, and to be honest, it definitely carried the show in a lot of ways. Now hold up for a second, just a disclaimer, I enjoy Jim Gordon and everything else a lot, you can tell that from my reviews, but you can't deny that this was one of Gotham's main selling points for a lot of people, and even just drawing in people who didn't want to watch the show regularly to just, tune into those episodes because of this amazing thing they had going with this Joker character. So Gotham really did embrace eventually that, especially in the downfall of Jerome, that since we can't really do the Joker right now, we're going to truly embrace that the Joker is an ideology. And here's some words from Danny Cannon, one of the showrunners himself. I think the Joker isn't so much a single person as he is an ideology. He's an idea that we can all live without fear, and we can all be free, and we can all not live within the world's restrictions and not live within the rules at all. This guy walks between the lines, and I think that's an ideology. It's not a single person, it's a way to live your life, and I think that's what we explore. And to be completely honest with you guys, I do agree with that. The Joker has inspired this in many people in the comics before, and what Danny Cannon is saying here isn't false. Also, you can see how from what I just spoke about a second ago in regards to what Cameron Monaghan said, this is the show's creativity to keep their gem going. But nevertheless, it was still something that was the undoing of Gotham's great Joker story, and I get why they really wanted to dance with this idea, the ideology and not being so much of a single person. Really, it was their way of, if they got 7-ish seasons, they could turn it into a full circle kind of arc, while milking out an interesting story with a talented actor which complemented the show's main plot. They had very clear examples of this. I mean, straight away in season 2, when Jerome first returned, they literally killed him, only to bring him back, and then to kill him again, but then bring in his twin brother. But this is, where they went wrong in a lot of the fandom's eyes. Even though I completely understand the approach and the mindset they went for, it just didn't land as well as it could have. The show is openly admitted, whether this is through showrunners detailing that they didn't truly know about some things, even as of season 1, what they were going to do with that character throughout the years of the show. I mean, it kind of makes sense. It could have been hit or miss, and that episode in season 1 with Jerome in the interrogation room could have just been a nice little Easter egg to that guy being out there, and that could have been that. A lot of fans felt as though the show itself didn't really know the long-term arc of this character, and so it felt like a bit back and forth with what they were doing, even in the early seasons of when they first killed off Jerome. Or that they just never truly knew what they were going to do until, well, they did, which is where they realized, well, we can have him as an ideology, and they went full steam ahead with that. But here's the thing, guys. In Gotham's defense here, and it's also very important to remember, as I feel like a lot of fans forget this, they planted the show's ideology arc right in the infancy of the show. Do you remember when Jerome died and you saw all the kids and the various citizens of Gotham laughing and watching the TVs with the blind fortune teller, Jerome's father, narrating over it? So I truly believe they did kind of somewhat know ultimately at its very core that the Joker being an ideology path was the long-term arc of Gotham's Joker. But in the fans' defense here, the way they conducted themselves with this, and how they brought back Jerome in season 3, for example, just felt like to a lot of fans, because it's not like we could have seen the future of the next 3 years of the show at this point, that they had abandoned that. And what I mean by this is that fans felt safe and reassured that when Jerome got resurrected by Dwight, it was like, oh, maybe they're not doing that inspiration arc with the example of what I already gave with the kids laughing and Jerome's death in general. He's back now, the show has realized they struck gold there, and they're gonna keep him. But maybe just not flaunt things like the Joker's name, etc. because of restrictions we've already acknowledged. But at least would have the prime proto-Joker back. I think we're all happy with this, right? I mean, by season 5, they could have low-key heavily insinuated that he was the real the real J. Just like what they did with Jeremiah. Also, at this point in season 3, this is, of course debatable amongst fans, but the resurrection gave Jerome another Joker-esque look with the scars on his face. So, all was really dandy. Surely they wouldn't kill this character again. He's got to be that guy who we know is all out there, and the show has realized that, right? No. Now, yet again, everyone, hold your horses. I know there's some die-hard supporters out there for Jeremiah Valeska. Don't get me wrong, I still see and appreciate everything Gotham did there, and heck, I'd even say Season 5's Jeremiah was my favorite design across all of the seasons for any iteration of the Joker, and I enjoyed how he became a lot more unhinged compared to his very blunt, monotone ways in the latter of Season 4. Not that it was bad either, as it was very Dark Knight Returns Joker in the end of Season 4. But I truly believe here, in my opinion, that this wasn't the right way to go. As much as an interesting story this was to go down, creating different roles for Cameron to play and weave and stamp their own mark onto traditional Batman canon, the show itself that is, I feel as though, like a lot of other fans, so I'm sure this isn't brand new information for anyone, that they should have kept Jerome Valeska as that main guy who would become Jay after falling in the vat of chemicals. Why, you may ask? Well, there's literally so many reasons that make a lot more sense. Jerome Valeska had a much bigger history with Bruce Wayne, so that final fight between Jeremiah and Bruce in Season 5, Episode 7, Ace Chemicals, would have felt a lot more satisfying if it was with someone who has been there since literally Season 1. I mean, think about it. The very same guy we saw in that interrogation room scene, it would have felt so satisfying and all-round fulfilling if the guy we saw scarred in a 10-year time jump was Jerome Valeska. Not some guy who had literally known Bruce for just a couple of days or something and undergoes a couple of cosmetic changes mixed in with a psychopathic nature to call him his very best friend and obsession. And honestly, with all due respect to the show here, it does feel as though that they just wanted to write in the whole Joker-Batman best friend obsession link that they sometimes explore in the comics into the show with Jeremiah. But guess what? There wasn't really any substance to that. There would have been if they wrote Jerome a bit differently in Season 4, because they definitely took away a lot of his interest in Bruce Wayne. In fact, he practically didn't even care about Bruce. So it would have felt a lot more of a no-brainer way to go if from this point in Season 4 with Jerome, they capitalized on their history, how he had Bruce by a knife in Season 2, how Bruce punched Jerome's face off, and that whole game in the carnival was to prove something to Bruce, as we all know, we've all seen it. I mean, do I really need to point out any more how much more sense it would have made to keep this attribute to Jerome, not Jeremiah? Now, if you're wondering, okay, but what if it's because they couldn't think of anything to do with Jerome anymore? Well, imagine Jerome still doing exactly what Jeremiah did with a few script changes. His next big stage of the plan, even if not exactly the same, was to level the city in some way with bombs, like Jeremiah did, or wanted to at least. Or in season 5, I could easily imagine if they wrote Jerome a bit more interested in Bruce Wayne himself in season 4, like I've already mentioned, doing the exact same thing Jeremiah did with his big day, recreating the night of his parents' murder. That would have felt so perfect. And I say that because I'm still acknowledging how good it was with Jeremiah. As I said, I liked Jeremiah still, but once again, full circle, with Jerome being in those scenes instead, torturing Bruce in these ways and not Jeremiah. Now, of course, I know Jeremiah came across a lot more calculating and Jerome was the more anarchic, chaotic type. This is the cool thing about how, Gotham explored different iterations of the Joker with these two characters, but they still could have given this to Jerome. Why? Because they could have quite literally just written that on the page. I mean, they did just write in all of the other stuff with Jeremiah and how unnatural that just feels of a change to the show with how much of a good thing they had going with Jerome. So yes, they could have quite easily just weaved that into Jerome's script. So how could Gotham's Joker have been done differently? Well, yeah, you've kind of got the picture now, and that's by keeping the character that started it all. The real MVP here, Jerome Valeska. And I also want to acknowledge that ultimately Gotham's Joker arc always had an impediment from its very birth, like an anchor weighing down around its neck, and so it always struggled to tread water with regards to having its Joker restrictions in the first place, which meant that they couldn't really even fully embrace the character himself, Joker, until the very final season and, well, the very final episode. And even then, they couldn't purely spell it out for you, even though it doesn't take someone of 5 IQ to realize that Jay is Batman's Joker. But yes, Jay should have been Jerome, or should I say Jerome should have become Jay. I do want to finish off by saying that I understand with what they were going with in terms of Jeremiah Valeska's character. There were cool parts to him, and I respected it, and I would have made this twice as long and explored in even more detail about every aspect I loved about each part of both of them, whether I ultimately agreed with it in the end or not. But I truly believe what I've pointed out is the very crux of Gotham's Joker. But in any case, what they achieved on the show was definitely a cool new iteration and stamp on traditional canon. So I hope you enjoyed that video. Honestly, as I said in the video quite a few times, if you probably noticed, I know there's die-hard fans of Jerome Valeska and Jeremiah, and I just wanted to do an analytical retrospective look about how I think things could have ended or, gone differently throughout the seasons. And I truly do believe, as I pointed out in the video, that Jerome Valeska, sorry, I just got in from running somewhere, Jerome Valeska would have been the most optimal way to go. You don't have to agree with me. I would love to hear your opinion if you do agree with me, or even if you don't, like if you have a completely different reason. If you think Jeremiah truly still, after all of the points that I made, was the best way and the way they went was the best and definitive way to go, I would love to hear your argument or debate about that. But that's the video, guys, so I hope you enjoyed it. There's going to be more videos coming out, but every couple of days as I'm away instead of usually every day. It's not every day, bro, but you know what I mean. Yeah, hope you enjoyed it, guys. Keep an eye out for more content like this. And yeah, videos will be back to daily content in a couple of weeks' time. So I'm away for 3 weeks in total. So hope you enjoyed this one, guys. Like the video if you did. Thank you so much for watching, and I hope to see you Gothamites, and even if you're not a Gothamite, in the next video. Goodbye.